You know what time it is, folks. It's the witching hour. What day is it? It's Friday the 13th. Now, I won't keep you for very long, but I am going to tell you a true tale of terror. Now, I want you to understand something. This story is a true story. I'm not making any of this up, but you don't have to believe what I'm telling you. But it is true. Now, back in March of 2021, I took a journey. Ended up in a state known as New Hampshire and a city known as Manchester. And in Manchester is a cemetery known as the Valley Street Cemetery. I spent a lot of time there. One day I happened to be riding in a car with a friend of mine. We were driving past this cemetery. And I looked in there and I saw these wild turkeys. I was like, why are there wild turkeys running around a fucking cemetery? That's some oddball shit you don't see every day. Or maybe you do, but I don't, or didn't at the time. See lots of fucking wild turkeys in a cemetery. Of course, I'm wondering to myself, what the fuck do wild turkeys eat in a cemetery? You know, not thinking about it. Now, this cemetery is extremely old. When I say old, I'm talking like, 1700s old, like very old. Founders of the city, colonists, Revolutionary War dead, Civil War dead, lots of dead children. Anyway, so one day I decide, I'm going to go explore this cemetery and see what exactly is in there, right? So I go back during the day one day, right? And it's a warm day, pretty much. It's March or maybe even April. And go to the cemetery, right? Just walking around trying to figure out where these turkeys are. But there are absolutely no turkeys in sight anywhere. And this cemetery is surrounded by busy streets and, cities. So there's like trees and shit in the cemetery, but there's no trees immediately around the area surrounding the cemetery. It's all like, urban and shit. So I'm just like, well, where the fuck did this huge group of fucking wild turkeys go? Exploring, walking around this little cemetery. Now, the day I went, it's the middle of the daytime, it's not night, obviously, because why would I go at night to go looking for fucking birds? They'd probably be sleeping. Anyway, as I'm leaving, right, to go back to the house and shit, I see this girl walking. Now, mind you, it's like rocks and leaves and shit on the ground, stuff that you would make noise if you're walking. And she's not making any noise as she's walking, but I'm not really paying too much attention to it. I'm thinking to myself, maybe I'm far enough away that I wouldn't hear her footsteps on the ground, right? So I just so happen to be walking in the same direction that she's walking, but she's ahead of me by maybe 30 feet or so, not very far, and I see her. But like I said, I'm not really paying a whole hell of a lot of attention to this girl. Now, what I do remember, what stood out, is that she had dirty blondish brown hair, maybe between the ages of 15 to 16, a white shirt of some sort, and blue jeans. I don't remember seeing her face, just the back of her head, as she was walking. Now, the way in which she was walking would either take you around to the other side of the cemetery, where there's more stones and shit, and then there's a break in the fence where you could get out, and then there's a gate that you could, I thought you could get out. It's an entrance, but it's locked. and it's been locked for a very long time because the chain itself is like rusted together, right? You know what I'm saying? So it's been there for some time and hasn't been disturbed. Anyway, so I stopped for a second. I think to tie my shoe or I dropped something. But either way, my eyes are no longer looking in front of me, I'm looking down. And when I get back up, the girl's gone, right? Now, like I said, I'm not really thinking too much of it because, she could have simply walked away and out the gate, right? Because there's no way she went continued straight ahead towards the open field because I would have seen her. And the only other possibility was she went out the gate, which was not that far away, right? So I make my way towards the gate because I'm figuring, well, if she walked out the gate, I can walk out the gate. But when I get up to the gate, I notice that, like I said, there's chains there. And if someone had jumped it, I would have heard the gate rattle as they jumped over it. So now, of course, I'm a bit perplexed. I'm like, well, where the fuck did this girl go, right? Not thinking anything of it. I leave. But I'm intrigued now, I'm intrigued. And not necessarily by this girl that I saw because, like I said, didn't think much of it until I went back the next day, right? So, go back the next day and I'm walking around and I see this, like, what used to be a bridge, but now that the water has receded, it's sunken down and it's kind of like just a stone thing, the top of the bridge, and like there's whatever. It's just like a big stone thing, and so it's sitting there, and on top of it is this textbook just sitting there, open to a page. It's not closed, and it's just sitting there, right? So I walk over to it, and I'm just looking at the book, right? It's in pretty good shape to be outside in the elements, right? It's a little warped and shit from, obviously being in the elements, but nonetheless, still pretty good condition. Now, on this stone thing, like I said, it was a bridge, so there's a little bit of a recession under it, right? And so I look under, and as I'm looking under, I notice something. It's dark as shit, right? But it's not that deep in where, well, at least it doesn't look that deep in where it should be that dark. Once again, I'm not thinking anything of it, right? Who cares? But there's this smell coming from there, right? It's just like this god awful stench, and it just stinks. So I'm like annoyed by this now, right? I take the book that I'm holding and looking at, and I toss it, right? Just arbitrarily, just throw it. Doesn't land back on that stone thing, falls off on the ground, closed, right? Boom. I leave. Nothing eventful happens that day, right? And at the time, I was streaming a lot of this shit on Instagram, so there were a couple of people that were like, "Well, you should go back at night. You should go back at night, right?" And I'm like thinking to myself, "Yeah, why not? Go back at night, right?" So I go back at night, but I don't really go in the cemetery because I'm not trying to be playing around with supernatural shit that I don't understand. Unlock some shit, and then I gotta deal with some shit. Don't want to do that if I don't have to do that. So that's what I didn't do. So, I'm kind of like on the outside of the cemetery because there's no lights in the cemetery. They no longer maintain it. So a lot of it is overgrown, very, like, areas of it are very wooded. And on top of it, it has become a ground where a lot of homeless folks will just sort of like, you know, live there, I guess is the word I'm trying to think of. Yeah, they would live there, like camp out in this fucking thing. So, all types of crazy shit would happen in this cemetery after dark. Was not a safe place at all, like by any means. There were rapes there, people got hurt, stabbed up and shit, robbed, all types of crazy. Even the cops didn't like to go into this fucking cemetery. You know what I mean? Like they steer away from it as often as possible. So I'm on the outside of this cemetery and I'm looking in and I see something, right? And it's like this black mass kind of like moving around by where the damn stone thing where the book is at. And I'm looking at it, right? And I'm live streaming this while, I'm looking. So I try to zoom in on it. And as I zoom in on it, you can see these two like little dots, like eyes, right? Now, obviously, it doesn't necessarily have to be anything paranormal, right? Because there's animals and shit that live in wooded areas, so it could have been one of those damn turkeys, fucking night creature, skunk, whatever. It didn't have to be paranormal, but it seemed strange to me that it was in the same area where that really weird stinky smell was in that fucking book and stone table thing, right? Anyway, I'm getting this really uneasy feeling as I'm looking down at this thing, right? And as I'm zooming in the camera, the two little dot things look directly towards my direction. At which point, I leave. I'm like, I'm done with this. Obviously, there's something down there. What it is, I don't know, and I don't care to find out. So I went home. The next day, I go back, right? Haven't had enough of this shit yet. So I go back to the cemetery. And at which point, I go back to where the stone thing is. And what do I see on the stone thing again? The book. And you're probably saying, well, maybe somebody was down there. People's eyes don't glow, number one. And they didn't have a flashlight. And it's dark as shit down there. So how would they see where this book that I throw on the ground would be to pick up, right? Okay, that's part one. Part two. It was open to the same exact page that it was open to the day before. And you're probably wondering, well, how the fuck do you know it was the same page? It's a fucking math book. Numbers are numbers. That's the thing. It was strange because this textbook had a full page ad in it for like something weird. It just didn't seem like you would have an ad in a textbook for any product that's not related to like school. I forget what it was exactly, but it was strange. And, once again, didn't think much of it, right? So I'm walking and I hear something like behind me. I'm not thinking anything of it. It's daytime. I'm not worried about anything like creeping up at me in the middle of the day, right? Of course not. Shit like that doesn't happen. Or does it? It did happen, right? Because when I turned around to see, who was behind me, there was nobody behind me. But a stick, like, came out from, like, the wooded side that I was near. So, I go looking around in there to see if one of these, like, fucking bums or drug addicts is, like, trying to be funny and shit. And I'm thinking to myself, why would they do that? That's dumb. That's going to draw attention to what the fuck they're trying to do. And the reason they're in here is because they don't want people, mind their business. Or they go sit in a park and do what they're doing instead of sitting here. Anyway, so, needless to say, I'm a little bit, upset about this. Because I can't definitively say that it was something paranormal, but at the same token, I can't say that it wasn't, right? Not getting any evidence, not getting any proof. So it's then when I have my friend's daughter do a little digging, a little research on some of the history of this, place. And two interesting things, came about. One was that there was a little girl that went missing. I guess there was a funeral or some type of event that went through there because it used to be a park at the time as well. And this was back in like the 17 or 1800s. And this little girl like got lost and she died. She like starved to death or some crazy ass shit like that because they never found her. Obviously, you didn't have like cell phones and shit back then, so it's not like fun. And the poor little kid, she starved to death and died. Either way, she died, and she died in that particular area, is what I was thinking. Anyway, right. Then the other story that I found out is that a young girl went missing somewhere in that area, like some years ago or some shit. She was 14 years old. I forget what her name was. And they had a picture of her. And in the picture, she was wearing the same exact thing that this girl that I saw walking through the cemetery is wearing. Now, of course, I'm not automatically thinking, oh my God, she's a ghost, right? Why think that? So I read a little bit more into the story, and what it was the girl was walking home from school, and she walked that way, and apparently, what someone thought is that she either ran away or just they didn't think it was anything because this I guess this kid was like a troubled kid, so people weren't thinking that it was foul play, right? Not giving her the benefit of the doubt. They didn't really look into it too much, right? They didn't find any bodies, so there was no reason for them to care. Which brings me to this girl walking through the cemetery, and pretty much the same exact thing that I saw on this girl in the picture of the story of the one that went missing. So, there's these two ghost girls, right? Now, I'm thinking what I saw that day, the first time that I went down there, was the girl that went missing and probably is dead in that cemetery. And what I may have seen was her last moments before her life was ended. Like maybe she was coming through there, somebody snatched her up and killed her. And I strongly believe that she may have been shoved or buried under that stone thing because there's, like I said, there's a smell there that's just, and obviously she went missing a couple of years ago. It's not going to smell now, but you know how they, supernatural things, they say it emits smells. I'm not one to say whether or not this is true. I just know that that thing stunk. It could have been a dead animal, for all I know. Or maybe they were just shitting there and shoving it up under this rock, for all I know. Who knows? But it was just a strange series of coincidences. Now you're probably saying to yourself, you mentioned this little ghost girl. Well, yes, I did. And one of the things that happened shortly thereafter is things would start happening when I would go places, like little stupid shit. I'd notice, right? And at first I thought I was just being clumsy. I did a lot of drinking back then, so I figured maybe it could have been just like a little bit of a tipsiness, knocking stuff over, walking too close to it. I was high energy at the time, so I was always bopping around and shit. But it would get to a point where it was so frequent in the way it would happen would be like I wouldn't even be standing near these things that would be falling off the shelf. Like one time me and my friend were in Dollar Tree and there was a shelf of like I think it might have been around like summertime. Like yeah, it was. It was like near July. So there's like these, displays for whatever holiday. It might have been Memorial Day actually. Yeah, Memorial Day. So there's like displays and stuff of things. And like this whole neatly stacked stable display just says and lands right at my feet, right off the shelf. And I heard like a little girl laugh. So I'm looking around like did some little child in the store like push some shit over and think it's fucking funny. Look around, there's no kid. At least not in the area where this happened, right? And I would have seen them run away. So now I'm just like, alright, this is weird. This is weird. And other little silly shit would happen, right? I'd be sitting talking on my phone and I would get shocked by my phone. Like little shocks in my ear. I'd be like, what the fuck kind of craziness is this? But what really let me know that there was something, at least at the time, what I believed, there was something following me. Unless I was completely out of my mind, which is possible, there was a little girl following me around because she would do like childish shit. If it wasn't a child, it was a very mischievous spirit because I would put stuff down and then I would go to the bathroom and I would come back and it would be gone. And I'd go looking around for it and shit, and then I'd look back where I put it and it'd be there. Now I know what you're probably saying. Well, you did say you should drink and smoke a lot. Well, I didn't say anything about smoking, but I did smoke a lot. And you probably just forgot that you put it there. No. Because whenever I would come in from wherever I was, I would always put everything in a specific place because I was always running in and out. So it always made sense for me to have everything I needed to grab right where I could grab it so I didn't have to waste any fucking time. Because like I said, I was always here and there. People call me, we need you to come over here and work on this art file shoot thing. Come on, let's go. And I would just be like, I would do it. So it was just odd to me that it wasn't in the place that it was supposed to be when it was supposed to be, but then when I go look for it and then come back to it, it would be there, And I would always, at least then, I thought I was just hearing things, but now that I'm thinking about it, there would always be this like laughter. And I lived around an apartment building, and there were kids not too far from there because there was a school not too far from there. So it wasn't uncommon to hear kids. So I didn't think anything of it. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't like, oh my god, there's a little kid laughing, ha ha ha. You know, fuck it. It was craziness. But yeah, needless to say, she followed me around for quite some time, just doing little silly stuff. And I forget what her name was because I actually did have the name of the little girl that went missing, and I started calling her that. And eventually, she followed me like literally. I kid you not. I'm not even joking with you about this. And for those of you who don't believe in ghosts, well, then you don't have to believe it. For those of you who do believe that the paranormal exists, believe me, I'm not making this up. And if, like I said, if it's not true, it's because I was, crazy at the time. I don't know what I'm talking about. But she followed me to Connecticut, and she would continue to do her little silly stuff. You know what I'm saying? She actually messed with one of my kids, which was funny because they didn't believe me, and then she did something, and they were like, "Oh my god!" I think she like smacked the taco out one of their hands or something, or rolled the ball over something weird. And of course, I didn't get it on camera, but I used to have like those little EVP recorders and shit, and like the little things, spirit box. And we got a couple of like really cool things. Like she said her name, which was awesome because I was just like, wow, like she said the name, and it was not one of us that said it, obviously, because we weren't talking and shit. So it was pretty cool at the time. And yeah, folks, that's my witching hour ghost story for y'all. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Like I said, it is a true story. I'm not making it up, and that's why there wasn't any like jokes or anything in it because I wanted to be serious. So yeah, the next time I may do a live scary story might be Halloween. So if you guys are interested in that, shoot me a little comment or something like that. Also, I gotta plug my stuff while I'm here. Those of you who follow me on Instagram are aware that on NOWC Apparel there is a giveaway for a free phone case for whatever phone that you have, as long as it's between the models of iPhone 11 to 15 and Samsung Galaxy S10. Skip the S10, go straight to S like 20 to 23. So just run on over there to NOWC Apparel, follow the page, stay tuned, like the ad that is the raffle ad. You'll see it there. Like it, and that automatically enters you into the raffle that will be run live on Instagram. And there's also another little raffle that I'm going to do for those of you who actually come to the live and participate but didn't necessarily, like the post. So you aren't entered to win the raffle for the free phone case. But just being part of the whole, raffle allows you to win whatever the second prize is going to be. And I'm not going to tell anyone what it is until they win. It's going to be a surprise. Hopefully you like it, but if you don't, well, you got it for free anyway. So, there's that, right? Of course. So, until next time, everyone, take care of yourselves and take care of one another. Let good prevail and put evil back in the darkness where it belongs.